Hey everyone, this is Jay Stein, and this is the Intelligent Investor Chart of the Week on the Debbie Rail YouTube channel. If you're interested in this stuff, you can find me on Twitter @_ Jason Stein. What we're going to do in this series is every week we're going to take a look at a fantasy football chart and talk about whether that particular player is a buy, sell, or hold. And this week we're going to talk about Chris Godwin and why I think he's a buy in Dynasty fantasy football. Let's get to work. Hey again, guys. Welcome back. So my process is about looking at past KTC prices and sort of what that tells us about what future KTC prices can be. And it's all about KTC versus fantasy points per game. That's kind of how I do my valuation stuff in the Intelligent Investor series on the Dynasty Nerds. And KTC, that is KeepTradeCut. It's a website that uses crowdsourcing by asking people whether they keep, trade, or cut certain players that visit the site, and they take all that data and they come up with values for each of those players, and it's basically a sentiment indicator. So we're going to look at Chris Godwin's chart today, and this is Chris Godwin from a KTC perspective. So the blue line here, that is Chris Godwin's KTC. You can see it starts off around 9,000 back in April of 2020. That's when I started the chart. And right now he's trading around 4,600. That's that blue line's kind of gone all the way from 9,000 to 4,600-ish. The red dashed line through the center of the chart, that is his average KTC over that time. That's around 6,000 KTC. There's two blue dashed lines, one above the red dash line, one below the red dash line. Those are one standard deviation for this series. So the concept is here that nearly 70% of all the observations should fall within those blue dashed band lines. As that blue line moves up towards those blue dashed lines or down to the blue dashed lines, you'd expect for it to reverse and come back to the average. Once you get outside of those bands, from a fantasy point, that's a watch item. That's a red flag. What's going to happen? We need to evaluate the situation, evaluate the fundamentals, and determine, are we in a new price regime here? The red solid line, that is the 150-day moving average that takes the past 150-day price data points and averages them. So it's basically smoothing out the line. And what that does is that tells me, it gives me buy and sell decisions. So when that blue line crosses through that red line, to the positive or to the negative, it's going to tell me whether I should buy or sell at those particular points. So one more thing, the purple bars, those represent the fantasy season. So that's week 1 to week 17 or week 18, depending what year you're in. And the white spaces, that's the fantasy offseason. So that includes the NFL playoffs, all the offseason, basically. So you can kind of see what happens to his KTC price during the season and outside of the season. And I draw your attention in this particular chart to one data point that I wanted to talk about. So in the second purple band, you can see in this chart, you can see his blue line cross through that red solid line and reach up to the red dash line. That was a buy signal. That'd be a situation where I'd be saying, okay, it's starting to look like a time to buy Chris Godwin. But what happened at that particular moment, that was when he tore his ACL in week 15 of the 2021 season. So he tore his ACL, sprained his MCL, and you can see from that point on, it kind of barely touched that 6,000 KTC and then fell off and then kept falling quite a bit. So this chart in the charting world of the stock market is what I describe as a classic bearish to bullish reversal chart. So in order to have a bearish to bullish reversal, you need to have a very bearish, exceedingly bearish chart for a long time, okay? So I think this qualifies as Godwin's price goes from 9,000 all the way down to 4,600 and below. over a very extended period of time. So this is a very, very bullish chart, or bearish chart. And then what happens is you bottom. You bottom for some time. It takes a little bit of time. You have basing, bottoming at the bottom of the chart, and then you see the chart, the price start to tick up a bit. And that's what we're seeing in the very right hand part of this chart. We're starting to see that blue line cross through the red line, getting close to crossing through that -1 standard deviation. And this is the reversal part of the bearish to bullish reversal. And these are the type of charts that you want to own in fantasy football, in the stock market as well. But in fantasy football, that's the type of chart you want to own. So I think there's upside here. I don't think there's as much upside as what you see for a Deontay Johnson, which is why I don't have Godwin at the very, very tippy top of my top buy list. But I do think he's undervalued and there is upside. So from a PE fundamental perspective, I see him as a guy that's 16 to 18 fantasy points per game. Right now, he's currently trading at a PE of around 27, with his peer groups trading at a PE of around 30. So 3-turn discount there. So from a valuation side, I see him with 15% upside to around 5,300 KTC. As you can see on this chart, if you're looking at the average is around 6,000. So my upside is fairly conservative for what this chart is telling me. This chart's telling me he probably could get to that 6,000 KTC level. But I'll talk about a little bit why I think there's a little bit of pressure, or why I should have some conservatism, and that largely has to do with the situational that he's dealing with. But his peer group, somebody asked me about this. What is a peer group, a cluster? So his peer group is wide receivers that are 25 to 28 years old that should put up fantasy points per game in the 16 to 20 points per game range. And so that group of wide receivers, I'll name a few of them here, is A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf. Those guys are both 25 years old now. So they've moved up into this category, or into this cluster. Deebo Samuel, DJ Moore, Marquise Brown, Deontay Johnson, and of course Chris Godwin. There's a couple others in there, but that's the type of group that we're comparing him to. We're looking at all those guys, KTCs, looking at all those guys' projected fantasy points per game, expected fantasy points per game, and using that to figure out where his price could be, which is why I'm putting a price target of 5,300 on him and not a price target of closer to 6,000, where I think if I was looking just strictly at this chart, where I put that price target. So why is there like sort of this situational discount to his PE? And that has to do with what's going to happen with Tampa Bay next year, and particularly what happens with Tom Brady going forward. I think Godwin's the type of guy that can overcome those types of situational issues and still produce, but it still should weigh on sentiment, and it could, it's a reason why I have a discount on this PE going forward, and why I wouldn't project him to get it back up to that 6,000. But there is upside here. There's 15% upside, so there is something to do with this chart. So how do we put that to work? What do we do here? So in Superflex, I'd be willing to sell to pay a late first for Chris Godwin. So, I'd be willing to give up that 2023 late first to go out and buy Chris Godwin right now, given his 15% upside. I'd also be interested in doing something like if I was to sell Jameson Williams, I could sell Jameson Williams and get Godwin plus another pick on top of that. That's that compounding thing I was talking about with Deontay Johnson last week. And finally, I'll take a guy that's on my top sells list. Kenneth Walker currently is on my top sells list. You could take Kenneth Walker and get Chris Godwin plus an early 2023 second, and reshoot on one of those rookie running backs this season, this year. And so that's sort of how I kind of view like what you could do, or how you could get exposure to Chris Godwin. Now, again, he's not at the very tippy top of my buy list. There's guys like Deontay Johnson that I are like screaming from the mountaintops type of buys. This is a guy that I do see as undervalued, and does have some upside, and I do think you can buy and make some KTC, but he's not at the top of the list. So yeah, thanks again so much for watching. Let me know who you guys want to see next week, and please like, comment, subscribe down below. And if you're interested in joining please join up on the Devi Rael Patreon. There's a lot of cool guys in there. You'll learn a lot. It doesn't cost too much. And if you want to reach out, you can find me on Twitter at _Jason Stein. And the Intelligent Investor series is on the Dynasty Nerds. There's no paywall. You can go and read that anytime. So go check it out. Let me know what you think. Again, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And see you again next week.